Good evening, everyone. I'm the storyteller, and I'm here to help you fall asleep with these horror stories about clowns. So before we start, make sure you subscribe to the channel and like the video. I'd love to know where you're from and what time you're watching this, so leave a comment. When you're ready, make yourself comfortable and relax. It all started. Ralph was a mischief maker. I don't think you can avoid becoming one if your name is Ralph. His parents cursed him at birth, ensuring he'd forever be the guy everyone invites to a backyard barbecue, but no one can truly trust. I've been the target of his pranks countless times, bought gags, elaborate deceptions, borderline scams, water balloons that were never just filled with water. It's funny. Everyone in the group liked Ralph, but one-on-one, no one really liked him. I don't know who invited him to Roger and Catherine's housewarming party. It was a bad combination. A guy who compulsively messes things up just to see people's reactions, in an incredibly expensive brand new house in suburban Atlanta owned by two wealthy real estate moguls. Speaking of cursed names, Catherine? Really? Did her mother really want to ensure no one would ever take her seriously? She was a natural beauty, never wore much makeup, and never made a fuss about her outfits, truly low maintenance. The name, on the other hand? A complete miss. The party was a small affair. Only the homeowners and a few guests. Tim was Roger's brother and, of course, Catherine's brother-in-law. I have to mention the second part, even though it's obvious because Catherine emphasized it at every opportunity. She grew up with 3 sisters, so she was thrilled to finally have a brother. Tim's kids, Layla and Aaron, were 16 and 13 years old, just old enough to attend an adult event without completely ruining it, but still young enough not to spoil the party's crazy vibe. Their mother was on a company retreat, one trust exercise after another, moving in with the HR director. Layla was an artistic kid who thrived on attention like a parasite. Aaron, on the other hand, was less demanding and preferred sitting in a corner listening to true crime podcasts. If you think about which one is older, you probably imagine the wrong one. Paul was a screenwriter, at least in name, because nothing he sold ever got produced. Every time you met Paul, every conversation that started, he had a new project on the verge of taking off. It's the Wild Bunch meets Dark. It's the Titanic's downfall meets the Matrix. It's the Lone Ranger meets Days of Our Lives. No one ever asked what happened to his previous projects, as it was obvious everything he touched ended up in development hell. Brent owned an upscale restaurant in Chicago, and although he never said a word about it, we all knew he was on the verge of starting a chain. Lately, he spent a lot of time in mysterious meetings, and a few gossiping employees spread the rumor so well that the idea caught on among his friends and acquaintances. He knew Roger from high school, and the restaurant was actually where he took Catherine on her first date. She was undoubtedly impressed, not knowing that Brent would never charge him a bill. Then there was me, a guy who inherited his father's auto shop in Detroit and drank in the office while the shop essentially ran itself. Roger and I were lifeguards at Lake Michigan during college. We had systems and routines to pick up hot girls, and when one day a kid nearly drowned, we forgot for half a second that it was our job. Don't worry, the kid was pretty okay. If I had to guess, I'd say Paul probably invited Ralph, hoping something wild would happen that he could then turn into a movie. It wasn't long after the party started when the prank became apparent. Probably one of a few he had planned. The doorbell rang even though all the guests were present. Everyone was confused for a moment, except Aaron, who was sitting by the fireplace listening to details of a quadruple murder. Ralph's previously stone-faced expression immediately fell apart, an impish grin breaking out uncontrollably. "Ralph, what's up?" Roger asked in his usual dry tone. "Why should I know?" Ralph replied with the biggest Cheshire smile imaginable. "You're all so suspicious. Who hurt you?" "You," Roger responded just as flatly. "You hurt us." Ralph shrugged and walked out of the room to open the door. "What? I thought the party could use a clown." Tim's grip on his whiskey glass visibly tightened as he took a deep breath and looked at his daughters. Erin continued to ignore the world around her, while Layla jumped up from her seat, letting out an excited gasp. "Clowns are true artists. We should support people in every societal role they choose." Layla nodded emphatically, as if scolding Tim for something he hadn't even said. "This mindset is not going to end well," Brent remarked quietly as he and Tim stared at each other. "I've got this," Tim snapped. Paul became attentive at the mention of a clown. I don't know if he thought no one would notice or if he simply didn't care. Ralph returned and gestured down the dimly lit hallway leading into the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, I present to you today's entertainment." "That's inappropriate," Roger chided. "Pay him and send him away," Brent agreed. Suddenly, a wave of color and noise burst from the hallway, accompanied by clumsy, unbalanced movements. It was a clown, a birthday clown. "Ralph, you asshole!" Roger laughed loudly, breaking the tension with his laughter. Catherine was speechless. Compared to all of us, she was relatively new to Ralph's pranks. She just stared, jaw dropped, as the painted fool for rent honked a horn, stumbled over his own feet, and wobbled around the room singing "Happy Birthday" in a cartoonish, silly voice. Layla ran to her sister and patted her on the shoulder while pointing at the clown. "Sis, look! Ralph's friend brought a professional clown for a live experience." Erin pulled out her earphones, gave the spectacle a disinterested glance, and said, "Kill me." "Hello, I'm Mr. Muffins. What's your name?" the clown asked. "Mr. Muffins, Roger." "Marlon Brando," Roger replied, laughing. "Nice to meet you, Marlon. Can I call you Stanley?" The clown shook Roger's hand, pretending his grip was crushing Roger's hand. "Oof, are you hitting Stella with that hand?" Mr. Muffin's first act was to make balloon animals for everyone. A dog, a cat, the usual. Brent asked for a monkey, and in a fitting twist, Ralph got an entirely untouched snake balloon. Catherine remained calm as she examined the balloon giraffe in her hands. "Hey, your favorite," Roger pointed out, still thrilled with his prank. "What made you become a clown?" Paul asked, throwing his arm over Mr. Muffin's shoulder and pulling him aside. "Are you truly happy, or is that smile makeup deep? Do you know that the red nose you wear is a nod to an alcoholic's red nose?" "Come on, Paul," Tim called after him. "Not everything is a character study. Let him entertain the kids." Brent pulled a handmade, organic, fair trade, artisanal cake out of the oven as Mr. Muffins moved on to the next game, hide and seek. "The cake needs to cool," Brent noted. "We have more than enough time." Ralph sneaked in. "Cocktails afterward." "Why not?" Roger added. With that, everyone found hiding spots throughout the house. It wasn't difficult. It was a spacious, 3-story monster house in suburban Atlanta, and the more you explored, the more you understood the extent of Roger's wealth. I don't know where the others went, but I opened a hatch to the attic, climbed up, and pulled it shut behind me. Since the house was newly built and the owners had just moved in, there was nothing left to hide from after that. Layla volunteered, "I'm it," to be the seeker and find the others. Surprise. The attic was beautiful, much nicer than my first apartment in Detroit. Also bigger. I could have just lived there, and it was very likely no one would have noticed. Even the moon outside the attic window looked larger than the one normal people see. It was strange, just as it finally became clear how long it would take for a hyperactive kid to find 9 people, clown included, in a house that surpassed all others. A loud bang echoed. Layla screamed, and it wasn't a "Dad bought me my first car" scream, it was a "someone's pulling me into a car" scream. Muffled by countless walls and 2 floors, the scream was still disturbing and clearly one of fear. I left the attic and fiddled with my phone, walking through hallway after hallway, down the steep mahogany staircase, back to the living room where we had originally gathered. I arrived to find the others already there, standing shoulder to shoulder, staring at something I couldn't quite see yet. Tim held his children tightly on either side while they held his midsection. As I joined the group, I saw the reason for the scream. Mr. Muffins stood in the middle of the living room, wobbling on unsteady legs, blood flowing from an open wound along the top of his bald head. His miniature derby hat had fallen off and floated like a paper boat in the growing red pool at his feet. Mr. Muffins held his temples with his gloved hands, now bright scarlet stained, and it looked like he couldn't hold his own head together. "I'm telling you," Mr. Muffins groaned, "I have a pounding headache." In a quick, shaky motion, Mr. Muffins lost his balance, stumbled forward into the kitchen, and fell head first into Brent's cake. He slid off the counter and landed on his back as a hidden whoopee cushion in his pants let out a long, slapping fart. "What happened?" Ralph asked in disbelief. I had never seen him truly shaken before. "An accident, obviously," Roger shook his head as if trying to clear his thoughts like a Polaroid picture. "He must have fallen and hit his head," Catherine agreed, the color draining from her face. "He falls everywhere anyway. That's his thing." Paul slowly and methodically walked over to the fireplace and picked up a poker from the floor. He twirled it a few times in his hands, then turned to the group, showing us the blood and tissue still stuck to the end. "Guys," Paul croaked, the fear in his voice audible, "it's very bad things meets bozo." I dialed 911 and we all sat down, waiting for help to arrive. Tim draped a blanket over the kitchen door to hide the scene from his daughters. None of us wanted to destroy evidence, and we weren't sure if the police would be upset if we left the crime scene. "Someone here did this," Aaron said after an impossibly long silence. "Calm down, honey," Tim said, using the word honey didn't lessen the anger in it. "No, I mean one of you killed this clown. I hope you realize that. We're all sitting here with a murderer." "That's not true," Catherine interjected, almost in tears. "It just isn't. Someone might have broken in. Or maybe he did it himself. He banged his head with a metal rod." Aaron grinned sarcastically. "A spectacular trick. But he can only do it once." "Maybe. The funniest people are the most depressed," Paul explained helpfully, taking a sip from a drink he held with two trembling hands. At this point, I expected sirens, but instead a musical melody filled the night right outside. It sounded like it was playing through a broken, rattling speaker. "Ooh!" Layla jumped up. "Ice?" Everyone startled as they suddenly heard the front door being flung open. "Hands up, girls!" Tim commanded frantically before yelling into the hallway. "We're unarmed, and there are children here. We don't know what happened." Two kids, hands raised high above their heads, arms fully extended into the air, scared me more than anything else that evening. I couldn't imagine what Tim was feeling at that moment. Heavy bootsteps echoed through the hallway, walking slowly and confidently. It didn't fit the situation. "You paid for this door. We would have let you in," Roger shouted, almost screaming. "Stop," Catherine whispered loudly. "Just do what he says." A single police officer entered the room, and as we spotted him, some of us started laughing again. His uniform was deep navy blue, but otherwise it seemed to strictly adhere to regulations. His face was painted white makeup with a red circle around his left eye and a blue one around his right. His bulbous clown nose must have had an LED light inside, as it blinked red and blue. On his belt, in a hip holster, was a rubber chicken. Everyone simultaneously lowered their hands. "All right, what's the problem?" the clown officer boomed in a rough voice. "I hear there's a clown down here." "Oh my God." Brent leaned back in his seat, exhaling heavily. "You scared us so much. Ralph, you're insane. This is too much." Ralph looked at Brent, then at the clown officer, then for some reason at me, and back to Brent. "I swear," he explained, "I have no idea what's going on here. This is way beyond my abilities as a party clown." "Calm down." The clown officer stepped around us a bit, his boots clacking on the hard wooden floor. "I need to inform you that you're being detained. You're not under arrest, but you can't leave, and I ask all of you to remain seated." "That's absurd." Catherine crossed her arms, making a skeptical face. The clown officer slowly walked to the ceiling door and, pulling the fabric aside, peeked into the kitchen. With his back to us, I could see the conspicuous "Stomp Me" sign attached between his shoulder blades. Absurd? He didn't even turn to us. "A dead clown, a murder victim, is absurd to you?" Aaron turned to Tim and gave him a lesson in clown-based murderology with a steely and unwavering tone. John Wayne Gacy didn't work alone either. The clown officer, now standing in front of us again, took the radio from his belt and spoke into it. "Yes, we have a possible Clowraw side. I'm here and have cordoned off the clown scene. Looks like a party. The victim must have been a performer. Too many old fat people, though. Something doesn't add up here." As soon as he released the button, a screeching sound of various fart noises responded back. Brent suddenly stood up, much to everyone's displeasure. Catherine gasped into her hands. "Well, excuse me for being so direct, officer, or whoever you are, but if you're looking for a murderer, it couldn't have been me." The clown officer stroked his chin and furrowed his brow at Brent. "And why could that be, boss?" Brent raised his arm to chest height and paused. "Back injury. When I was in culinary school, a stack of pans fell on me. Since then, I couldn't raise my arms above my head. No chance I could have lifted the weapon high enough to hit this clown on the head." The clown officer reached deep into his pants, pulled out a red and white striped baton, and walked over to Brent skeptically. He placed the baton on each of Brent's elbows, one by one, and pressed slightly upward. Still, Brent's arms wouldn't rise any higher than before. "I understand," he pondered. The clown officer turned to the fireplace, noticed the bloody poker Paul had leaned against the wall, and then turned back to Brent. "So that's the murder weapon?" We all nodded. The clown officer soon nodded as well. "I believe you." Brent turned to the rest of us, his back to the clown. "See? It's simple." Behind him, the clown officer reached into his pants again, pulled out a piece of wood, a handle, an axe. Before any of us could fully comprehend what we were seeing, the clown officer spun around several times and swung violently. It was surprisingly silent in the room as Brent's still smug-looking head fell off his shoulders and rolled across the carpet. We heard the swing, the splintering, the dull sound, everything before the first person started to scream. "What the hell are you doing?" Roger shouted, now standing up for Brent despite the events. The clown officer responded without hesitation. "Eliminate the suspect. I need your name and badge number," Paul mumbled, eyes wide open on the brink of shock. "No problem, sir." The clown officer shoved the baton back into his pants and shook his leg. "I'm Officer Oscar Oxifer, and my badge has no number. I found it in a box of Clown Krispies." Ralph jumped up and made a run for it, sprinting past Officer Oxifer and leaving everyone else in the dust. Oxifer glanced back slightly. His arm seemed to dislocate and extend beyond normal limits, grabbing Ralph by his belt and throwing him to the ground as if pulled back by a giant rubber giraffe. "Please, sir." Oxifer sounded eerily professional. "Don't make me tell jokes about the long arm of the law. That's old material." He reached both hands into his pants, wobbling uncomfortably long before pulling out a notebook and a pencil with each hand. "All right, walk me through the chain of events that led us to this situation." We let Ralph explain what happened since it was entirely his fault. He explained why he hired Mr. Muffins, which agency he called, where he saw the ad, everything up to the hide-and-seek point. "Where did everyone hide?" Officer Oxifer asked. Tim and I exchanged glances whenever the clown officer wasn't looking. Through hand movements and meaningful looks, I conveyed the idea that I knew how to get him and his girls out of the house. He was waiting for me, when and how. "We should all return to the places where we hid. You know, to retrace our steps," I blurted out, trying to sound as concerned and helpful as possible. "I was under a table in the hallway," Roger said. He was flushed and sweating profusely, holding Catherine's hand tightly, as if he was about to let go and they'd be separated forever. "I was under a bed on the second floor," Catherine added. Paul finished what was left of his drink. "Closet, second floor. Catherine's closet, but I didn't know until I came in." Tim wanted to speak, but I subtly placed my finger on his lips to silence him. "I was, in the shower. One of the showers." "All right, everyone to your places then," Officer Oxifer ordered with a few finger snaps. I'm sure each of us thought about fleeing, but given the impossible skills we'd seen from this civilian circus freak, it wasn't clear how that would be possible. I pulled Tim aside as we all left the living room, Oxifer watching us like a hawk. "There's a window in the attic. Leads to a grate. If we hide, take your kids and go," I whispered as fast as I could. "Yeah, no kidding, I will," Tim whispered back. "You know I haven't, right?" "I don't care," I growled. "If you have, good. Damn this clown. Curse all clowns. Right now, I wish I had." Officer Oxifer was an eerie presence as he followed the group to the first hiding spot. "So, I was under that table," Roger said as he crawled on all fours with a groan. "Actually, I banged my head on the overhang. You can see here where I cracked it." Officer Oxifer knelt beside Roger and examined a small crack in the wood, then looked at Roger's head, where he likely saw a red mark from the collision. "Well, damn," Oxifer muttered. "You were here." Officer Oxifer stood up, his hands dipping into his pants. "No!" Catherine screamed. "No, no, no!" Paul and Ralph held her back as Roger looked up from his spot on the floor just in time to see a sledgehammer come down on his back. We shoved Catherine out of the hallway, none of us looking back as the sound of metal smashing flesh echoed repeatedly. "Another suspect eliminated," Officer Oxifer explained proudly as he rejoined us. Catherine was a crying mess. Ralph reached for the tissue in her blouse pocket, I assumed to wipe the tears and mucus from her cheeks, but she pushed his hand away. "Leave me alone. Just let me die," she screamed. The rest of us reached our hiding spots without incident. I was the last to hide, ensuring Tim, Layla, and Aaron made it to the attic. They closed the door from the inside as Officer Oxifer and I watched from the lower floor. Only then did I feel a shiver run down my spine. At no point had I realized I was ensuring I'd be alone with the clown officer. Just him and me side by side in growing silence. The silence was broken by another scream. It was a war cry. "Ah!" Both Oxifer and I turned to see Paul, his tie fluttering behind him as he ran toward us, holding an umbrella like a spear. "Paul, no!" I shouted, not for my safety, not for Oxifer's, but for his. The distance closed quickly as Paul drove the pointed end of the umbrella into Officer Oxifer's chest. Oxifer stumbled back and fell to the ground. Paul stood there, panting and gasping, while I ran after him. "Paul, what the hell? I did it. I killed him." "The clown?" "Yes. Wait, which clown do you mean?" "The original one." "What?" "No, I meant the cop. I killed the cop clown, but not the first one." "Right. Because I was wondering, since you picked up the fireplace poker and wiped your fingerprints off it in front of everyone, it seemed like you could have done it to explain why you touched him." "That would be a very obvious and mundane clue. I'm a writer. I thought I wouldn't do that if I were guilty." I screamed in surprise as Officer Oxifer sat straight up. He stood, pulled the umbrella from his chest, and ripped open his shirt. Directly under the fabric was a thick black body armor plate with yellow block letters that read, "Umbrella-proof vest." With a blindingly quick throw, Oxifer hurled the umbrella directly through Paul's throat, embedding it in his neck and stopping his death scream with a wet glug sound that released a blood spurts. The umbrella opened behind his head and he fell backward to the ground. Officer Oxifer regained his composure and refocused his attention back on me. "So you were in the shower?" I looked at the blood splatter marking the walls, the art around me, a porcelain giraffe, a landscape painting of an open grassland, small wooden carvings of exotic animals. "No," I admitted. Oxifer wasn't surprised by my confession. He showed no visible reaction, and the colorful makeup on his face made it impossible to read his true emotions, if he had any. "I want immunity," I clarified. "Immunity from what?" "From you. Are you really asking me that? You want immunity in exchange for what exactly?" I took a deep breath, feeling the full weight of another life on my shoulders. "I know who killed Mr. Muffins." Oxifer reached into his pants again. I was backed into a corner. He stood between me and the hallway, and a wall stood behind me. Before I could beg for my life, he pulled out a huge stack of paperwork. "Sign this," he said, handing me a suspiciously warm pen. I did as I was told. There was no way to go through everything. It was hundreds of pages, so I didn't even start reading. As I scribbled my name, Oxifer spoke. "I'm willing to grant you and the remaining innocent parties immunity if you actually provide information that leads to the brutal takedown of the perpetrator in this case." I led the way as we moved into another of the house's many rooms. "Come out," I said coldly. I had decided along the way to harden my heart and show no ounce of compassion. "You did this to us. You started this whole thing, and there's a growing amount of blood on your hands." Catherine had to look up at both of us now. Unlikely partners in the strangest investigation ever. "You pressed Mr. Muffin's skull." Catherine turned dramatically away from us and crossed her arms. "Why did you do it?" Oxifer asked. "Did he catch you cheating with someone in the house? Did he see you snorting an illegal substance? Or are you just a party pooper? A bigot who holds a grudge against all clowns?" "She doesn't hate clowns." I stared hard at her back. "She is one." Catherine gasped and turned back to me, betrayal hard in her eyes. Unfazed, I grabbed the tissue from her blouse pocket and, as I expected, kept going regardless of how long I pulled. Tissue after tissue, color after color. I had made my point. When Mr. Muffins appeared, you were surprised. Not because he was a clown, but because he was a clown you recognized. Sure, you don't wear makeup anymore, and you dress very modestly these days, so you might have thought he wouldn't recognize you. But when he made your balloon animal, a giraffe, your favorite, you knew he knew, and worse, he knew that you knew that he knew that you knew. "It's true!" She fell to her knees, holding my shoe in one hand and Oxifer's boot in the other. He was my ex. I left the big circus tent just to get away from him. Oh, he was a beast, a monster. I tried to get a restraining order against him, but the court was a circus. I changed my entire identity, but it still wasn't enough. "Sir, you don't want to be here for this," Oxifer said, pushing me out of the room. "You're still going to kill her, even though she's one of you?" I asked. I had hoped it wouldn't happen, but either way, the torture had to end. "Just keep moving. I have to pull an entire electric chair out of my pants, and it's better if you don't see that." I pulled Ralph out of the garage, and, with no better ideas, we stood idly in the living room again. I explained everything that had happened, but I don't think Ralph believed most of it. "We need to kill him," Ralph insisted. "I don't think we can," I tried to convince him, but in vain. "After what he did to Brent, to Roger, to everyone? Is Tim okay? What about the girls?" The lights dimmed for a moment. "Tim got them out." "Good for that, but the rest? Shit, man, we need to kill this freak of nature." I watched passively as Ralph took the blanket off and poured the burning shots he'd wanted all evening. Although he kept the alcohol in the bottles and stuffed the necks with rags. I think, although everything had completely spiraled out of control, none of us had expected any of this. And even though Catherine was the trigger, Ralph still felt damn guilty since his prank had set everything in motion. I stood on the sidelines as Officer Oxifer came down the stairs and marched into the room. Ralph stood behind the kitchen island like a soldier taking cover. Oxifer slowly surveyed the room, then spotted us. "All right, I need to take you to Clowntown for questioning. Don't worry, you'll get your paperwork back afterward." As the first bottle flew through the air, I only thought about how the flame's light made the house look more rustic and inviting, like an alcohol-scented candle, I guess. Oxifer immediately caught fire, grabbing himself from his flammable police hat down to his flammable police boots. He didn't scream as the bottles continued to break around him. Instead, he let out a series of comical exclamations as his burning silhouette flailed around the room. "Oh no, the couch!" he yelled as he fell on it and set it ablaze. "Oh God, the curtains!" he shouted, stumbling and wrapping himself in them, spreading the flames to the ceiling. "Good sir, the minibar!" he cried, falling over and tipping it, burning alcohol spraying everywhere. "Let's go!" I grabbed Ralph's arm as he picked up another completely unnecessary bottle to light it. "I think you did it." In the front yard, Ralph and I met Tim and the girls. The light from the raging fire engulfing the house illuminated the yard like midday as we all watched in stunned horror. A siren blared in the distance, and soon a fire truck pulled up abruptly nearby. A bunch of clowns fell out of the fire truck. Firefighter uniforms in every color except red, face paint running with sweat. After a series of antics and clumsiness, they finally pulled out the fire hose and aimed it at the house. It sprayed confetti, making everything even worse. Nearly 16 years ago, we stumbled upon a dead clown in the woods near Pine Grove, a small town nestled in the heart of Oregon. At least, that's what I believe it was. There's no way we'll ever know for certain, and perhaps that's for the best. It's one of those memories you carry with you for a lifetime. You might not think about it every day, but the memory remains, forever etched in your mind. It was a very strange afternoon for all of us, but we never talked about it. Not that we really wanted to, but shortly after that summer ended, we all moved away to pursue our studies elsewhere, and over the years, we lost contact. We all attended the same high school in Pine Grove and grew up almost inseparably, but our town was pretty small, which meant you had to move if you wanted higher education. Mike, Sarah, and I all left. Jake was the only one who never left the town, born, raised, and ultimately killed himself there. It's been almost 2 years since his suicide, which honestly didn't surprise anyone. I wouldn't say I never really considered him a friend, but he was always somewhat troubled. It wasn't his fault or anything, but he became delinquent, and from the stories I've heard, he was determined to take a self-destructive path. However, yesterday I learned there was more to his death, something the public or the newspapers never disclosed. I'll share the details that have kept me awake since I heard them, but first, the most important thing, the dead clown in the woods. What the hell is that? Mike was the first to spot it. From our location, we could only see an orange balloon gently swaying in the wind in the direction he pointed, with its string attached to something on the ground. It was definitely a strange sight, especially in the middle of the woods, and it immediately caught our attention. We didn't particularly enjoy hanging around in those woods. It was just something we did when boredom got the best of us, or when Jake insisted for hours before we finally gave in to his request. That day was probably a mix of both. The trees provided pleasant shade on that particularly hot day, and Jake wanted to show off his brand new air rifle, something we weren't excited about. It wasn't the first time he brought something like that to our games. But before I get to the discovery of the body, I need to explain some of the dynamics of our group, if you could even call it that. Mike was a smart kid, small stature, glasses, short hair. You get the picture. You'd think someone like him was regularly teased, and while that was the case on a few occasions, he always had a sharp tongue, but mostly kept to himself and never really showcased his talents. He was my best friend. Sarah was awesome. I think she really enjoyed hanging out with us guys. Well, mostly with Mike and me. And for some reason, I always loved how she didn't care what the other girls were saying behind her back. She was cool, and I can't help but smile when I think of her. She was always in a good mood and ready to do almost anything. Whenever we wanted to try something new, she joined 9 out of 10 times. And then there was Jake. Everyone in Pine Grove knew Jake. His father was a well-known drunk, troublemaker, and alleged abuser who got into some kind of trouble with the law at least once a week. He'd urinate on neighbors' cars, break shop windows of stores that wouldn't let him in anymore. Stuff like that. One night, a situation quickly escalated between him and some police officers who were called to break up a fight. Threats were made, a weapon was drawn, and one of the officers shot him on the spot. He was dead before the paramedics arrived, and all the witnesses who saw it unanimously confirmed it was a justified shooting. Jake was 9 years old when it happened, I think. I was 8. Why do I mention that? The officer who killed his father was Mike's dad, now the current sheriff of Pine Grove. As you can imagine, the gathering sometimes became pretty awkward and embarrassing. Jake clearly held a strong grudge against Mike, a terrifyingly tangible one, yet always lurking just below the surface. He'd make the occasional inappropriate comment, an indirect joke, but he never confronted him directly, which was odd since Jake was a tyrant with a violent temper towards most others. Considering all that, it's no wonder we all became pretty nervous when he brought his dangerous toys along. On the surface, I'd say we always managed to keep up a good facade, pretending his dominant antics didn't affect us. Having Sarah around definitely helped keep him in check, and Mike wasn't stupid either. He knew, like we all did, that Jake would probably hurt him if he got the chance, maybe even intentionally, to make it look like an accident. As soon as he saw the balloon, Jake saw it as the perfect target to aim his rifle at, but we told him in a slightly annoyed tone that we should check it out first. It could have just been a stupid balloon, but it was also a colorful, unusual sight. It wasn't like we were expecting to find a treasure or experience the adventure of a lifetime, but if we could get a few minutes of genuine curiosity and excitement out of it, we would. Jake's brain was just wired differently. I think he was only thinking about immediate destruction and ending things right away. That was his idea of fun, but this time he kept his finger off the trigger and ran toward the balloon. If he couldn't shoot it away, he had to be the first there. Damn, if it had just been a balloon waiting for us, I bet he would have kept it for himself and teased us all day. But as you know, it wasn't just a balloon. Whoa, what the... Jake stopped abruptly right in front of us, causing us to halt as well. As I looked over his shoulder, my eyes were immediately drawn to the ground a few meters away. Someone was lying on the grass, face down. The colorful clothing was undoubtedly that of a clown. The wig, the gloves, the shoes. No doubt about it. The clown's arms rested directly beside the legs, palms facing upward toward the sky. It looked like someone had just fallen to the ground without even trying to break the fall. The balloon string was attached to the clown's left wrist, hovering eerily above the body, while something else was attached to the right wrist. A briefcase, one of those equipped with handcuffs. We had no idea what an adult could be doing there, especially in that particular attire. Cheap, I might add, and just lying in the dirt. Hundreds of thoughts must have raced through our minds, and I'd be lying if I said that clowns wreaking havoc in the woods wasn't a scenario that came to mind. But the atmosphere changed once we realized the clown wasn't moving, not even acknowledging our presence, which was confirmed when Jake threw a pebble at the body. Dude, what the hell? I said, instinctively grabbing his arm to show him I didn't agree with what he was doing and that I wouldn't let him do it again. He pulled his arm away from my grip without looking at me, his eyes still fixed on the clown. Jake smiled, which was never a good sign. Oh my God, is it? I turned to Sarah, who was now holding the hem of my t-shirt. I don't know, I said. I think so, yeah. Holy shit, Yeah, I'm calling my dad, Mike said. As strange as it might sound, Mike was the only one at that time with a cell phone, mainly because his dad was a police officer and overly protective. My parents had promised to get me one by the end of the summer, while Sarah had gotten hers a few weeks earlier when she fell into a pool. As far as I knew, Jake didn't have one, although I'd heard he'd stolen a few. But that day, it didn't matter whether he had one or not. Don't call anyone. We all looked at Jake. What? Why not? Mike asked. Dude, are you kidding? I've never seen a dead body, have you? Mike didn't say anything. He just looked at Sarah and me with a worried expression, probably the same one we had on our faces. You should just touch it and stuff, Jake continued, approaching the body. Sarah gagged. No, I'm not staying here. This is wrong, she said. I didn't want her to leave, but I saw her eyes fill with tears, and I didn't have the heart to let her stay. I just couldn't do it. Call someone, I mumbled to her as I looked away from Jake. She nodded. Hey, don't mess it up for me, hear me? Shut up, Jake. And so we were back to the three of us and the dead clown. You're still hitting yourself? Mike and I exchanged a look, and we both knew exactly what the other was thinking. Jake wasn't exactly hard to read in this situation. Our best option was to just go along with it and give him no reason to get angry with us. Hold our positions until Sarah sent someone for help. Jake still had his rifle with him, which Mike certainly considered as he tucked his phone away. I nodded in agreement since we couldn't afford to upset him. Mike and I then approached Jake and the dead clown at his feet. Strange he doesn't have a smell, he remarked. What if he's not dead? Mike asked. Jake looked away from the clown for the first time in a while and looked at Mike. He's dead, of course. How do you know that? Did you check for a pulse? We were talking, and talking was good. Buying time, distracting Jake, and so on, but I could see Mike's voice gradually rising, which was only natural. It was a normal reaction, especially when you have a parent who enforces the law. Mike just wanted to do the right thing more than anyone else. No, I didn't, Jake replied. Didn't you say you wanted to touch him and stuff? Then do it. Mike was practically provoking him, but it might work. Getting him to follow through could actually make him back down if he didn't really want to. Jake stood up and moved closer to push Mike's head. What the hell is your problem? Jake probably saw this as an opportunity to get closer, but Mike knew how to turn it around. My problem is that if this person is still alive and needs medical help, you could be held responsible if he really dies. Is that what you want? Jake seemed briefly concerned, but that tiny spark of empathy was gone in an instant. Why the hell do you care? You're not a doctor. You're not a damn cop. Mike let out a nervous chuckle. Oh, right, you're right. Go ahead and do whatever the hell you want. That worked great for your dad, too. Damn. I didn't have to look at Mike to know he realized he'd made a mistake by saying those words. The look on Jake's face is one I'll never forget. It's the first thing I see every time his name comes up. That precise moment in time that lasted only seconds, but felt like an eternity as he held his air rifle with murderous intent. I could feel the knots in my stomach as I held my breath because I knew. I could feel it. There was a 50% chance he would raise his rifle in blind rage and shoot Mike full force, causing who knows what kind of damage. Jake didn't do that. Instead, he just turned his back to us and walked back to the body. But deep down, I knew he could have just as easily fired his rifle immediately. He just chose not to. Mike stammered, maybe realizing what could have happened too. I'm sorry, whatever. Fuck you. Just when we thought we had avoided a big mistake, we heard Jake load his rifle. My heart skipped a beat, but then I saw he wasn't aiming it at us. Instead, Jake positioned the rifle's barrel against the dead clown's head. Want to see something cool? I instinctively objected. I had to do it. It was the right thing, and I also knew Mike wouldn't voice his opinion again so quickly after the words we had just exchanged. Plus, I didn't want to see the brains of a dead clown. A voice in my head told me I would never sleep again if I did, and the thought of that was worse than anything Jake could ever do, even just barely. Jake was visibly angry. Tisk. Why not? He's already dead, who cares? We'll say it was an accident or something. It's disrespectful, man. Don't do that, I murmured. He wasn't exactly convinced. Look, I know he's a clown, but clowns are people too, you know? I said, barely managing a fake smile. Jake laughed. Haha. Yeah, I didn't really want to do it, he said, and I breathed a sigh of relief. But I really want to see what's in this briefcase. Could be money or drugs or something. We had completely forgotten the clown had a briefcase, and aside from that, seeing a dead clown would probably make you forget a lot of things. Any more objections, you wimps? Mike stepped forward. I don't think that... I lightly hit Mike's arm and looked at him with my, dude, let him do whatever the hell he wants as long as he doesn't desecrate a corpse look, which I had to improvise, but it worked. Mike stayed silent afterward. Think you can open it? I asked. Damn right I can. It took a few shots and a few hits with a large stone before he broke it open, revealing the contents of the briefcase. Inside the red velvet interior were two items. A plastic-like squirting flower, like the ones used to annoy people by spraying water in their faces, and a large, heavy-looking handgun, a model that strongly resembled a desert eagle. The whole thing got weirder by the minute, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized no one would have taken us seriously if we had told them about a dead clown with an orange balloon, a gun, and a flower in the woods. I was so confused by the whole thing that I didn't notice Jake reaching for the gun in the briefcase. Oh shit, this is heavy. It was. I could feel it. He tried to aim it with one hand, but the weight was too much, so he dropped the air rifle and waved it around with both hands. I think I saw a word engraved on the side, but I couldn't quite make it out at first. And then he turned towards us. Dude, what the hell are you doing? Don't play with that crap, I yelled. Jake laughed. You don't know what kind of gun that is. Throw it away right now. Of course, he didn't listen. He didn't have to, obviously. We were just kids. But it was always that kind of stuff that gave him a sense of power. Kneel. Mike gave me a nervous look before turning to Jake. What? Kneel now, asshole. Jake repeated as he ominously and resolutely approached Mike, the gun drawn in front of his face. Then I saw the engraved word on the gun. Die. For some reason, and despite its obvious coolness, something just didn't feel right about it. For one, it was an unusual prop for a clown. Not just because it was a gun, but also because such a negative word was engraved on it. And secondly, I don't know how to put it, but something about this gun screamed bad news. Mike looked at me again, and I did the only thing I could at that moment. I shook my head as if to say, just do what he says, go along with it. Mike nodded slightly and took a deep breath, probably realizing it was indeed the best choice. He knelt down on the grass. You, look away, he said to me. What, why? Jake, this isn't funny anymore. Do what I say or it'll get worse. Damn, Jake. I turned around as Mike called me, his voice trembling, and I could see he was at his breaking point. I wanted to do something, but instead I relied on letting Jake have his moment. It had worked in the past, and there was also the issue with the handgun. Whether it was a replica or not, I didn't want to introduce more variables into the equation by trying to snatch it from his hands. Close your eyes, Mike. Shut them tight. Just do it, Mike, I said, not giving him time to think about Jake's request and what it probably meant. Just do it, and it'll be over soon, buddy. Trust me. I also closed my eyes without realizing it. Maybe I was trying to share a bit of Mike's burden, or maybe I was just afraid of what Jake's next move would be. Had I underestimated him? Did he really have the ability to do something like this without thinking about the consequences? Was I about to lose my best friend? Is that what impending death feels like? My heart raced as all these questions filled my head until a sound snapped me out of my thoughts. It wasn't a gunshot, it was the sound of Mike vomiting. Ugh, what the? He said. I turned around and saw Mike hunched over on the grass, wiping something from his face. I looked at Jake, who was laughing hysterically and holding the squirting flower in his other hand. Mike had thrown up his lunch. What did you spray him with? I asked. Don't know, it was already filled with something. Don't you know? Are you completely insane? I should have asked, but it made no sense to ask rhetorical questions. I went to help Mike up, but he waved me off, telling me to give him more time. Calm down, guys. Look, it's just a replica, you see? I looked at Jake and saw him pointing the handgun into the air before pulling the trigger. It barely made a sound as a red pop flag was shot out. It was pretty anticlimactic given the gun's robust body and appearance. But, yeah, Jake continued as he walked back to the body. He crouched near the clown's head. What the hell is all this? And who is this clown? That might have been the first and only sensible thing Jake said all day, but neither Mike nor I felt like saying anything to him at that moment. Besides, as strange and incomprehensible as the whole thing was, we didn't care about that damn clown anymore. It wasn't our business anyway. We just wanted to go home. We were visibly upset, to say the least, and Jake wasn't dumb enough not to notice. Hey, maybe we know this guy. Maybe he's your dad, Mike, he joked. Mike was completely unimpressed, and Jake became visibly angry because he didn't get the slightest reaction from him. Tisk, whatever. Let's see what this clown looks like. I watched as Jake struggled to lift the clown's head to get a better look. As soon as he did, he immediately let it drop and threw himself to the ground, stepping over the grass and everything else as he tried to get away from the corpse as quickly as possible. "What the hell?" he screamed. This wasn't one of his pranks. I saw the color drain from his face and a pure expression of horror took over. "What? What's wrong?" I asked, more concerned for Mike and myself than for him. Jake pointed at the clown. "Dude, what the hell? What is this?" "Who is that?" I asked again, also increasingly worried. Jake pursed his lips, but no words came out at first. "He has no face." Mike was up on his feet by then. "What? What the hell does that mean? Did he blow his face off?" Mike asked. But from the strange look on Jake's face, I could tell that wasn't entirely the case. "No," Jake stammered, still visibly shaken. "There's nothing, it's just skin, what the hell? No face, nothing." "You've completely lost it this time, man. Good riddance." I didn't have to look at Mike to know he didn't mean those words entirely seriously. Given everything that had happened up to that point, and after Jake's genuine reaction, it could have been true, but it didn't matter. I grabbed Mike's shoulder, ready to leave. "I bet you're lying. Let's go." "I am not lying, I swear!" The way Jake screamed sent a huge chill down my spine, freezing me in place. I'd never heard anything like that from him before, ever. He sounded so desperate, so helpless, so real. Yeah, whatever," I said, trembling. Jake stood up, still holding the handgun. "Look, no eyes, no noses, no nothing. Look at it, There was a loud pop. The orange balloon inexplicably burst on its own, and that was the last straw. In our then mental state, our bodies reacted before our brains did. We ran in all directions without saying a word. Jake ran the opposite way, while Mike and I ran for about 10 minutes before we ran into Sarah, who was sitting on a fallen tree trunk. "Sarah, what the hell, are you okay?" I asked. "Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean for you guys to get into trouble," she said, apologizing for not calling for help. "It's okay," Mike said. "Come on, let's go. We have to leave now." "Yeah," I said, calming her down. "It's okay, everything's fine now." We never talked about it, and since there was no mention that anything or anyone was found in the woods, we just decided it was probably better to forget the whole thing. And I think we did. We all moved on with our lives. Sarah is now a successful author, and Mike became a well-known and charismatic CEO after breaking out of his shy shell. As for me, I'm managing, I think, but as I said, there was more to Jake's suicide than I found out, and I want to talk about that. A few days ago, I returned to Pine Grove to attend a wedding. I hoped to see both Sarah and Mike, maybe catch up a bit, but they couldn't make it. Mike's father, now the sheriff of Pine Grove, was there, and we could talk and share a few drinks. He told me how well Mike was doing and how proud he was of him and everything. I'm not sure how the topic of Jake's death came up, as I already had a few good drinks in me by that time, but it did. We talked a little about it, but after a while he became somewhat curious and asked if I had heard anything about the circumstances of his suicide and so on. He quickly apologized and invited me to dinner, that was yesterday, while promising to disclose some sensitive things regarding his death. It wasn't a suicide at all, he told me. "Didn't he shoot himself?" I asked, perplexed. "Oh, he definitely did, but it was an accident, no damn doubt about it, and every day I thank the Lord for it. A damn miracle, that's what it was. You know why?" I shook my head. amazed as he took a sip of whiskey before sighing deeply. He wanted to shake up the school staff, kids, and then suicide through the police. That was his plan. I really wanted to steer this boy away, you know? I didn't want him to end up like his father. That's why I kept trying to get Mike to hang out with him. Maybe somehow help him, change him or something. I'm sorry I let him off the hook with you guys. I had no right. It's okay, I said. I don't think anyone could have done much, but... He looked at me. Yeah? Are you sure about everything? Oh yeah, all on video. You see, at the time of his death, he recorded himself, showed his little arsenal, clothes, and all that crap while going over his plan repeatedly, and then one of his guns went off while he was playing with it, and that was it. Almost blew half of his... Sorry. We stood in silence for a few seconds. Well, it's better this way, especially if it means he couldn't take innocent lives. That would have been terrible. A miracle, I tell you, he said. He always liked playing around with those guns a bit, so I think it's only fitting. The sheriff gave me a look as he rubbed his chin. Something was clearly bothering him. Since you brought that up, I was hoping you could help me with something. I hesitated at first, not knowing what he could ask from me, or how I could help him. Sure, yeah, sure, what is it? Give me a second, I'll be right back. He left the room and went to his office to get something before returning. He seemed hesitant. I want to show you something if you're up for it. You're not going to show me... No, not that. Not his body. Well, more like the moment right before his death. It's just a screenshot. He placed it on the table and slowly pushed it toward me, giving me plenty of time to say no if I wanted to, but I just let it come into view. During his last moments on Earth, Jake definitely looked insane, holding a gun next to his temple with bloodshot eyes. But it wasn't Jake himself that caught my gaze and made my stomach churn. Do you happen to know anything about that handgun he's holding? The sheriff asked. No, I lied, as I immediately recognized the die engraved gun that had been fired at Mike years ago, taken from the dead clown's briefcase. But why are you asking? Well, that's the one. That's the gun that accidentally fired and killed him instantly. Luckily, he mistook my facial expression for something else and continued explaining himself. If it sounds like a strange thing to ask, that's because it is exactly that. Strange. He took the screenshot back from my hands and put it away. Jake lived alone in an abandoned apartment. He hadn't left his apartment for weeks, preparing for the massacre he planned. And our people swear that no one entered his apartment after he killed himself. Okay, I said, also wondering if I really understood what he was trying to say. This handgun, the one that killed him, the one we saw on video triggering and blowing his brains out, we never found it. But how does that explain the gun on the video? I pressed. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. That gun was never supposed to be part of his plan. It was just a tool he thought he could use to manipulate the situation. The real weapon was his intention to cause chaos. The accidental firing was just that, an accident, but he had already set things in motion. I frowned, trying to piece it together. So he wanted to create a scenario where he could justify his actions? Use the chaos to make a statement? The sheriff nodded. Exactly. He wanted to leave a mark, to show everyone what happens when you let things spiral out of control. He saw himself as a catalyst, a way to bring attention to the issues he faced. I rubbed my temples, the weight of the revelation sinking in. But why the clown? Why use a clown as a symbol or a prop? He believed clowns represented the hidden darkness in people, outwardly cheerful but hiding something sinister underneath. It was a metaphor for his own struggles and the facade he felt he had to maintain. The room felt colder as the implications of his actions washed over me. And the briefcase with the gun and the flower? What's the significance of that? He wanted to leave a tangible reminder of his presence and his message. The gun with "die" engraved was a statement of his final intent, while the squirting flower was a nod to the trivial things that can hide deeper issues. It was his way of saying that even something seemingly harmless can have a dark side. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. So, all those years, we never knew the real reason behind his actions. We just saw a troubled kid who couldn't find his way. The sheriff placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. We all did, in our own way. But understanding the truth now can help us make sense of the past and prevent something like this from happening again. I nodded slowly, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. Thank you for telling me this. It changes everything. He smiled sadly. Sometimes the truth is hard to face, but it's necessary. If you ever need to talk, my door is always open. As I left the sheriff's office that night, the weight of the past years seemed both heavier and lighter. Heading light on Jake's true intentions didn't erase the pain, but it provided a sense of closure. Pine Grove remained the same small town, but the shadows of that day in the woods lingered, a reminder of the complexities hidden beneath the surface of our seemingly simple lives. I have nothing left. I escaped, but honestly, I wish I hadn't. I just hope Dimples didn't manage to get away. My name is Jason. 2 months ago, my family and I moved from Berlin to a small suburban town called Maplewood, near Chicago. The house Claire, my wife, and I bought was twice the size of the old apartment we had just left. Claire is a teacher and was reassigned to the local elementary school, while I work from home. I set up my office on the first floor, right next to the door that leads to the L-shaped basement area. The basement wasn't a traditional dark and dingy storage room. The hard concrete walls were painted completely white, and the dusty gray wooden floor was similarly coated. The wooden stairs, though tired and slightly warped, were also painted to give them a bit of life. The previous owners had left their pool table and various arcade machines there, along with assorted furniture scattered throughout the house. The reason was unknown to us, according to the realtor. I thought our 2 children, Henry, 8, and Lily, 6, would love it as a play area. It was a Saturday afternoon, a month after we had moved in. Claire had just returned home with Lily. They had spent most of the day at the Maplewood Mall. I was finishing up some work in the study and could hear Henry playing an arcade game in the basement. Suddenly, Lily ran into the room and tapped me on the knee. "Daddy, Daddy, look what I have!" Lily said excitedly, waving a small balloon animal. "Aw, sweetie, did you get that at the mall?" I asked, turning my chair and leaning down to her. "No, Daddy, Dimples gave it to me," she replied. "Dimples? And who's that, Lily?" I asked playfully. "The clown, Daddy. Dimples the clown is my friend," she responded. "All right then, keep playing. Daddy has to finish his email," I said, giving her a quick kiss on the head. Lily ran out of the room and down the stairs to the basement. I heard Henry playing Street Fighter behind Lily's quick footsteps. I finished the rest of my email and went into the living room where Claire was watching an episode of a PBS documentary. "Hey, honey, how was the mall?" I asked as I sat down. "It was okay. I managed to get Lily new school shoes," she said. The exhaustion in her voice was evident. "That sounds fun," I replied sarcastically. "Oh, believe me, it was. I'm sure she tried on at least 25 pairs before deciding on one," she said, irritated. "Well, at least it's done. You can relax now," I countered. "Yeah, I'm trying," she said, indicating that I should end the conversation. Okay, I still have a few reports to finish up," I said, standing up. "Have fun," Claire said sarcastically. I was just about to leave the room when I remembered why I went in. "Claire, honey?" I said, turning around. She mumbled, her thoughts and eyes still on the TV. "Did Lily bring a balloon animal from a clown while you were at the mall?" I asked. She shook her head. "No? Why?" she asked. "She had this balloon animal and said she got it from a clown," I said, confused and slightly worried. "She might have found it while we were outside. I was holding many bags, so I probably didn't notice," she explained. Okay, just kind of weird, that's all," I said, turning to walk away. "I think I saw her holding it, don't worry," Claire said as I left the living room. I sat back at my laptop, my head still feeling a bit uneasy because of what Lily had said. I could hear her laughing in the background as footsteps rushed up the basement stairs. Henry came into the study. "Are you done, Dad?" he said, hovering over my left shoulder. "Almost, buddy. I just need to send this report and then I'm done," I replied. "Okay, I'll set up the console upstairs so we can play," Henry said as he left the room. "I'll be right up," I called back as he ran up the stairs. After I finished and sent my report, I shut down the laptop and walked past the basement door. I could hear Lily talking and giggling, so I thought I'd go check on her. "Lily, honey, are you okay?" I asked as I walked down the creaky wooden stairs. It was eerily quiet. "Lily?" I called again, now a bit worried. "Hi, Daddy," Lily said, appearing around the corner. "Who are you talking to down there?" I asked, expecting her to say she was playing or talking to an imaginary friend. "I was playing with Dimples, Daddy," she said excitedly. "Oh, nice. Can I meet Dimples?" I replied, slightly concerned by how real she made him sound. "Sorry, Daddy, you can't see him. It has to be a secret," she said innocently, running back around the corner to her play area. I followed her a second after she disappeared around the corner. I turned in the direction she had run and stopped as confusion and panic washed over me. She was gone. "Lily, where are you, honey?" I shouted now in a gentle but firm tone. "Claire! Claire!" I called out, alarmed for my wife. She came running down the basement stairs, her steps heavy with fear. "What? What's wrong?" she said, trying to catch her breath. "I can't find Lily. She was just here," I said, my breath growing deeper. "She must be somewhere here," Claire replied, searching under the pool table. I went to where Lily had been playing and saw the papers scattered on the floor, drawn with colored pencils. They all showed the same thing, a brightly drawn clown. The silence was suddenly broken by knocking sounds from the small storage closet under the stairs. It sounded almost like someone's fingernails running over the door. Slowly, I walked toward the door. "Lily, why are you hiding from me?" I asked in a soft and soothing voice. I reached for the handle and opened the door. There stood Lily, laughing and covering her mouth with her hand. "You found me!" she exclaimed and ran away. "Don't do that again, you scared us," I said back, my face and tone now stern and warning. "Stop, Daddy, Lily. You could have gotten hurt in there," Claire said as she bent down to hug her. "You can't come down here alone anymore, Lily. You have to play with your brother from now on, okay?" I said with slight irritation in my usually gentle voice. She nodded. We all went up the stairs. I turned off the light as I approached the door. I quickly turned it back on when I heard scraping from the darkness behind me. Hesitantly, I walked back down the stairs, the wooden panels creaking under each step. A faint sound came around the corner. It was music. The soft melody grew louder as I turned the corner. Beneath the crumpled drawings on the floor lay a small music box. Every hair on my body stood on end as the closet door slightly opened. A feeling of fear surged through me just as the music box stopped playing. The silence overwhelmed me while a surge of self-confidence filled me. I marched to the closet and ripped the door open. There was nothing but an old broom and some leftover paint cans. I closed the closet door and went upstairs. I shook my head over what I almost did because I had given in to my own fear. Later that night, after the kids were in bed, Claire and I sat down for a relaxing evening watching a documentary on PBS. Then we heard the basement door open and 2 sets of quiet footsteps descending the stairs. It was the kids. "I'm going down," Claire said, sighing deeply in frustration. I kept watching TV as Claire walked past me and went into the basement. After about 10-15 minutes, they still hadn't returned. I found it a bit strange, but maybe she was talking to them down there. 5 minutes later, I finally decided to check on them. I approached the closed basement door. It was strange, I thought. Usually the door is open. I opened the door and was greeted by darkness. "Claire? Kids?" I called down, my voice echoing in the dark depths. I turned on the light, which flickered and buzzed before stabilizing. Slowly, I walked down the stairs, calling them one by one. "Claire? Henry? Lily?" As I neared the end of the stairs, I heard a sharp scratching sound on the floor to the left. It sounded like something heavy and metallic was being picked up from the ground. The faint sound of the music box played again. Slowly, I turned the corner and my body froze in shock. Before me sat, against the wall, my beloved family. Blood splattered over the white wall behind them, and their faces, once beautiful and friendly, had the same large, forced smile. 2 metal nails were firmly embedded in each of their cheeks, so the horrible smiles couldn't fade. Tears streamed down my face as my whole world collapsed before my eyes. The music box then stopped playing. "Jason, oh Jason," spoke a scratchy, ominous, almost melodic voice, luring me out of the closet to the left of my family's bodies. "Why did you have to stop my fun? We were having so much fun," the voice continued, laughing loudly and crazily, echoing off the surrounding walls. "What do you want? Why did you do this?" I stammered through my heart-wrenching tears. "She tried to stop our game, And you tried to prevent Lily from playing with me." The voice became deeper and raspier. It went on. "Now I can play with them as much as I want. Just look how happy they all are," it said, while a pale, bony hand grabbed the edge of the closet door. I slowly backed away as a small figure emerged from the closet. He was about 5 feet tall, wearing large, blood-stained shoes. A deep red cape covered his body, adorned with a spotted, frayed collar. His shiny white face had a red-painted, smiling mouth with crooked yellow teeth. 2 metal nails were firmly driven into each of his cheeks. His eyes were dark and menacing, with black face paint outlining every corner of his eyes and extending over his brows. His smooth, shiny forehead bore a bloody children's handprint. On his terrifying head sat straight, bright red, spotted hair. Slowly he lifted a rusty, blood-covered metal hammer in his right hand while staring directly into my eyes. I was frozen for a moment before I ran. I stormed up the stairs, taking 2 or 3 steps at a time, while a maniacal laugh echoed behind me. I stumbled through the door and slammed it shut, leaning against the cold, grainy wood. I closed my eyes, my breath coming fast and shallow. Suddenly I couldn't breathe from fear as I heard footsteps slowly climbing the stairs. The footsteps were accompanied by the sound of metal scratching against the wall. The voice then echoed behind the door. "Jason! Jason, I just want to make you smile!" I ran into the kitchen, turned on the gas stove, grabbed some oil from the countertop and a box of matches from the drawer. I hurried back to the basement door just as the footsteps stopped. A bang and a crash echoed through the door, a large crack beginning to form in the middle. I poured the oil on it just before I swung and threw the burning match onto it. Flames engulfed the door as I ran out of the house and to my car. After leaving our fenced-in driveway, an amber-colored flash lit up the street behind me as my house exploded into a fireball. I continued down the street and burst into tears. I called emergency services, sobbing as I told them I had escaped a house fire, but my family was still inside. They ultimately explained it as a combination of a kitchen fire and a gas leak. After the funeral for my wife and children took place, I stayed with my parents for a few weeks. Since then, I've moved across the country to a small apartment in Austin. It's been a month now, and I haven't had a full night's sleep since. As I lie here thinking about that terrifying, murderous clown and writing this down, I can't help but wonder, what happened to Dimples? Did he die in the fire, or did he somehow manage to escape? In the end, only 3 bodies were found in the house. The most ironic thing about all this is that I believe I'll never smile again. I don't know what I was thinking. It seemed like a harmless idea. Find one of the clowns, corner them, and figure out why they were doing all this. I would become a media sensation. My discoveries could expose the entire clown wave, all because of my courage. I would be a hero. At first, my town, Clearwater, seemed like a sacred place that no clown dared to touch. It was a devout working-class town in Ohio where everyone knew their neighbors, and the mailman could get by on the housewives' generosity for an entire week. There was Clearwater High School, a community hub that, surprisingly, valued education more than tradition. Everyone who had ever lived in Clearwater attended that school, just as everyone here got their first job at the local manufacturing plant. So things were simple. Some might call it cliché. We called it home. Of course, there were crimes. Once, for example, the oldest son of the young Johnson family lost it and smashed 3 windows in the church. It was all over the local news and in the newspapers. People gossiped, naturally, but no one reprimanded him for his actions. Instead, everyone supported him and provided the help he needed. I don't mean to brag, but this was simply a truly pleasant and caring community. When the news broke that a clown had recently been seen on the school steps, it caused a ripple through the quiet town. Everyone followed the stories, but no one was worried about seeing one here. Why would we be? We all knew it was a prank, albeit a foolish one, that would be forgotten. It was attributed to young Johnson, who had once again lost it, until the next sighting, and the next, then another, then 2 clowns together. It wasn't until a dog was found mutilated in the town center that the population collectively began to panic. Curfews were imposed, businesses closed early, school and church services were reduced to twice a week. If anyone had walked by after dark, they would have found a ghost town. Fear now ruled Clearwater. I wanted it to stop. My plan was simple. Every night since the first incident, clowns had been seen on the school grounds or in the churchyard. All I had to do was stay out of Officer Peterson's sight while I waited to see a clown, then just charge at them and find out what the hell they wanted in town. Simple. Darkness had finally fallen on the night I decided to act. I had never believed in weapons, nor had I ever taken one into an unarmed confrontation. But I have to admit the hysteria had been getting to me up to that point. I went out with a wooden baseball bat and a flashlight. It was just after 10 p.m., and most residents were already asleep, hoping to see the dawn sooner. This made it easy to evade Officer Peterson, as I could cut through backyards and hide in driveways if patrol cars got too close. This was a small town. On a normal evening, I could reach the school in less than 10 minutes, but the police didn't take any chances. It took me almost an hour to reach the school, and when I did, I was disappointed to find nothing. Nothing. I positioned myself in a nearby oak tree that offered a clear view of the front of the building and made myself comfortable. Something in my gut told me I had a long wait ahead. I wish I could say that after a few hours on watch, a clown would come and I would get my answers. I would really like that, but I fell asleep. I woke up on the lawn beneath the tree, blinded by daylight and with a bat pointed at my face. Officer Peterson was stern and visibly shaken, but friendly to me. In the station, he gave me coffee and a nice selection of donuts and fruit for breakfast. In other towns, this might be interpreted as trying to flatter a suspect to get them to talk, but not here. This was Midwestern hospitality at its finest. We talked for a while about everything going on with the clown situation. The conversation didn't focus on my actions, as I had expected. Officer Peterson was more interested in what I thought about how to handle this clown situation that was currently paralyzing the town. I believe he saw my actions as more courageous than burdensome, as I wanted. I could still be a hero. After a few hours, we reached an agreement regarding the situation. The police chief's office would ignore any investigation I wanted to conduct alone, even after hours. However, any criminal activity would be punished to the fullest extent, especially assault. He made it clear that no matter who was behind it, I was not to lay a single finger on them. It was a reasonable compromise. That night, I returned to my position. It was much easier without having to hide. A simple nod was the only exchange I had with the patrolling officers. When I reached the school, I found no signs of life once again. I climbed the oak tree and made myself comfortable for a long night. About 2 hours into my watch, I still hadn't seen any sign of a clown. My eyes were getting heavier by the minute, so I decided to inspect the area and see if I could find anything that might indicate a clown was nearby. As I jumped from the lowest branch to the ground, I was greeted by a large figure wearing a bright blue, shiny overall adorned with buttons and patterns. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't against the tree and gasping for air. All trust left my body as my eyes met his face. I had expected a bad silicone mask, not a white human face with red lips and blue hair staring back at me. The absence of a red nose also unsettled me. This wasn't the clown I was prepared for. I couldn't move. My body had locked up when I needed it most. The clown didn't move. It didn't even blink. He stared deeply into my eyes with bright green ones and a smile permanently fixed on his face. A standstill. After a few more minutes, the clown extended one of his white, gloved hands toward me. I looked at his hand and then back to those strangely bright eyes without even inching. Nothing about the clown had changed except his arm. The clown still didn't blink. He still had that damned smile. He nodded a few times in the direction of his hand, as if he wanted me to take it. I was confused, but hoping there was humanity behind the costume, I reached out my hand to shake his extended one. Before I could fully connect my palms with the clown's, I was hit by a slight shock that surged up my forearm. I screamed. The clown tilted his head back, grabbed his belly, and laughed at me. It sounded like a broken, squeaky toy was stuck in his throat. The electric shock must have been enough to jolt my body because I jumped up and pushed the clown as hard as I could away from me. He fell back in an exaggerated manner, flailing his large white shoes and sliding his backside across the grass. After a brief pause and an expression of disbelief, the clown began to weep silently, turning his fists beneath his closed eyes and planting his heels into the ground. I was annoyed by the theatrics and started yelling at him. Nothing that was even remotely coherent came out of my mouth. just a jumble of curses and accusations. After venting my pent-up frustration, the clown stopped sulking and started laughing again, but this time it was accompanied by another sound, a louder sound that wasn't coming from his mouth. The air around me was overwhelmed by a noise that resembled a million cicadas clicking in a deep whisper. I couldn't hear the clown in front of me anymore. Everything was drowned out by whatever was causing that background noise. I fell back again, holding my head in pain and trying to cover my ears. Boom, my heart stopped. I looked up and the clown in front of me was now a Rorschach pattern on the grass. My investigating officer, Officer Peterson, stood beside me with a shotgun. "Run!" he shouted, grabbing my arm and pulling me to my feet. All around us were clowns of all shapes and sizes, approaching us with their mouths wide open and slightly downward. We barely made it to the station, dodging the clowns that were flooding the streets. It has now been 38 days since that incident. We are locked in the station, taking turns in the camera room. The clowns, they have taken over our everyday lives. We watch them while shopping, walking dogs, attending school, and working. It's as if they're trying to replace us. The only strange thing they do is surround the station at night and laugh in unison, all night long until the sun rises. Then they move on, as if nothing happened. We have full access to the utility lines here and follow the news. We know it's spreading. I fear that my actions that night may have caused them to despise humans. I wanted to be the hero, but I can't find a way to stop this. Clearwater is gone. Don't be fooled by the media. Stay away from here. More importantly, don't go near the clowns. This was all meant to be a birthday gift for Jake, my friend. He had always been a huge fan of escape rooms, and when I stumbled upon the clown room online, I knew it was the perfect present for him. The website felt like a blast from the past, with neon fonts and pixelated GIFs scattered everywhere. It looked like no one had updated the site since the 90s, which only added to its charm. In the center stood a poem. "Welcome to the clown room, where laughter turns to doom. Can you escape the jester's grin, or will you meet your end within?" Below it was a form to book the room. I thought it was straightforward and filled out all the required fields, my email, full name, and phone number, and hit send. Nothing happened afterward. No thank you message, no confirmation email. I found it a bit odd, but assumed the website was just old and outdated and the venue might no longer exist. I pushed it out of my mind and continued searching for another gift for my friend. A few days later, I received a strange call from an unknown number. When I answered, all I heard was static on the other end. I was about to hang up when I heard a faint whisper. "The clown room awaits you," the voice said before hanging up. The voice unsettled me, but I couldn't deny I was also intrigued. It was as if the people behind the clown room were taking their immersive experience to the next level. I couldn't wait to see what they had prepared for us. Just a week later, right on Jake's birthday, I received a brown envelope. It was addressed to me, with no return address or stamp. Curious, I opened it and found a key that looked like an ordinary house key. Attached was a note with an address printed in all the colors of the rainbow. It looked like someone had drawn the letters in MS Paint. The note smelled terrible, like a mix of decay and something else I couldn't quite identify. A smile spread across my face. This was it, I thought. The key to the clown room. I slipped the key and the note into my pocket, determined to surprise Jake by taking him to the room without any warning. Convincing him to go to the mysterious address on the note wasn't hard. He was always up for a good adventure, and the fact that I was being so mysterious only made him more excited. However, as we made our way to the address, I couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The neighborhood in Detroit where we found ourselves was run down, filled with dilapidated buildings. We walked what felt like miles until we finally spotted a large, decrepit apartment building. By then, the sun had already set. We approached the building's entrance. I double-checked that this was the right place, and indeed, the address on the note matched the one on the building. I hesitated for a moment before using the key to open the door. It smelled awful inside, a mix of mold and mildew. I wasn't sure where to go next, but I noticed a directory on the building's wall. It was an old, yellowed piece of paper with names written in faded ink. "Come on, Lisa," Jake said. "What are we doing here?" He was getting a bit restless, which, if we could just find this room, was a good sign. I turned with a sly smile and told him to wait. As I examined the directory on the wall, I noticed an old faded clown sticker next to one of the names, Zeke Cranch. I immediately knew we had found the room, and according to the list, it was on the 6th floor. I headed for the stairs, only to realize the elevator was out of order. "We have to take the stairs," I said, my heart racing as I led the way. The stairs were dimly lit, and the murals on the walls were peeling and covered in graffiti. I could hear dogs barking on one floor and a couple arguing loudly on another. My unease grew with every step. By now, I was starting to have doubts. Nothing felt right, but I could see Jake was getting excited and decided to ignore my gut feelings. Eventually, we reached the 6th floor, and there it was, Zeke Cranch's apartment with a large clown sticker on the door. I took a deep breath before using the key to unlock the door. "Seriously," Jake said, "what is this?" "You'll see," I replied. "We're not buying drugs, are we?" He laughed. My hand trembled as I inserted the key into the lock. The door creaked open and we stepped into a small, cramped one-bedroom apartment. As soon as we entered, the door slammed shut behind us and I heard a mechanical lock engage. I turned around and tried to turn the handle, but it wouldn't budge. "We're locked in," I said, my voice shaking. "Oh, okay," Jake said, trying the door himself. "What?" "Relax," I said. "It's an escape room." "Oh," Jake said. "That's what this is about?" He smiled. "It's called the Clown Room," I said. "I found it online." "I don't know," he said. "It doesn't look like—" "Happy birthday," I said, but it didn't sound as enthusiastic as I wanted. He smiled and kissed me. "Thanks, babe. This is— I don't know what to say. It's either brilliant or some kind of cheap scam. I mean, look at this place." He was right. It was nothing like I had imagined. Besides, no one greeted us or explained the rules. The room was decorated more to be creepy than fun. The walls were dirty and painted white, and on one wall were black graffiti letters that read, "To escape this room, a price must be paid, a sacrifice made, a life taken." The furniture consisted of colorful miniatures as if the room was designed for a child, and the floor was covered with broken, stained, and old toys. I noticed a toy phone with a clown face on the miniature desk, and a small, worn-out teddy bear in the corner with its eyes ripped out. Worst of all was the upside-down clown hanging from the ceiling, sitting in a lotus position directly above us. The lack of windows added to the eerie atmosphere. As we continued searching for clues, a feeling of fear overcame us. The room's creepy ambiance became increasingly unsettling. I picked up the toy phone and tried to make a call, but all I heard was hysterical laughter from the receiver. It sent chills down my spine. Jake checked his phone, but mysteriously it was dead. The same happened to mine. We were completely cut off from the outside world, and as we realized it, panic set in. "This is just junk, Lisa," Jake said. "I don't understand how—" "Wait," I said, pointing to the wall. "There's something here." I had discovered a blue plastic lock on the wall, hidden behind a pile of old toys. I approached it and examined it carefully. It seemed to require a plastic key. "I think we need to find the key for this lock," I said. "See, there has to be a way out. We just need to focus." We began searching for the key, turning over every toy, rummaging through every corner, and inspecting every piece of furniture. But our search was in vain. The only thing we found was a strange handheld game console that seemed straight out of the 80s, with a childish and colorful game on it called Clown Quest. The game's objective was to find keys that would unlock various doors. As Jake tried to master the game, hoping it might give us the key we needed, I found something in the bathroom adjacent to the small hallway. The clown decorations there were already unsettling enough, but when I looked into the bathtub, I screamed in horror. It contained two mummified people embracing each other. "Jake!" I shouted. He rushed to me. "What? Holy crap! They're not real, are they?" "I don't know," I said. "This isn't fun anymore." I went back to the room and looked up at the clown on the ceiling. "Let's get out of here! Can you hear me? This isn't fun anymore!" Nothing happened. "I think they're real!" Jake shouted from the bathroom. He ran to the front door and pounded on it, hoping we would be released. I joined him, banging on the door and screaming for help. But our efforts were futile. The door remained firmly shut, as if mocking us. Helpless, we collapsed onto the colorful miniature sofa. I buried my head in my hands and cried. Jake tried to comfort me but didn't know what to say, except that we would find a way out. Then he returned to the game and continued playing, sweating profusely as he jumped between platforms and tried to avoid pitfall traps and cute little enemies. I went back to the phone and picked up the receiver. "Let's damn well get out of here, you piece of shit!" The laughter on the other end grew louder, as if it was more than just a recording and someone on the other side was actually laughing. "This isn't funny!" It felt like I was losing my mind. I sat down on a small chair, my mind racing with thoughts of how we could escape. The game console in Jake's hands was our only hope, and he played it with feverish intensity, determined to find a way to beat it. Hours passed, and I lost track of time. My stomach growled with hunger, and my throat felt dry and scratchy. I tried the faucet in the small empty kitchen, but the water was shut off. The same was true in the bathroom. There was nothing in this apartment except the toys and the strange decorations. I tried the phone again, but it was still useless, the laughter on the other end a constant reminder of our captivity. I wondered if someone was looking for us, if anyone knew we were missing. But the more time passed, the more hopeless I felt. It was as if we were completely forgotten, wasting away in this clown-themed prison. As night fell, the room became darker and colder. Jake and I huddled together for warmth, our spirits sinking with each passing moment. We whispered to each other, sharing our fears and doubts, but deep down, we both knew we might never get out alive. "Will we end up like those two people in the bathtub?" I asked. "They must have gone through the same thing, right? I'm so sorry I brought you here." "We don't know, those people might have been placed here," Jake said. "And I think there's a way out. I just have to finish this damn game. I just need to rest a bit, and then..." He was interrupted by a noise above us. We both looked up. Slowly, the clown sitting on the ceiling turned towards us and began crawling in our direction. I let out a scream and we both jumped to our feet. Jake grabbed the nearest object, a small plastic chair, and threw it at the clown. I did the same, tossing letter blocks at him. The clown effortlessly dodged the objects, his movements swift and fluid. It seemed to feed on our fear, reveling in the power he had over us. As he got closer, we could see his face more clearly. It was painted white, with black lines around the eyes and mouth. His grin was wide and twisted, his teeth sharp and jagged, and though he moved like a human, there was no sign of humanity in his empty eyes. We ran to the bathroom, only to find that the door wouldn't lock properly and couldn't be secured. "What are we going to do?" I cried. "Jake, what are we going to do? I don't want to die here." "Distract him," Jake said. "I'll finish the game and you keep him from stopping me. Do everything you can." I screamed at the clown, letting him follow me as I ran in circles around the room. Jake sat on the floor and continued playing. Chaos erupted. Jake yelled at the game in frustration, and the clown chased me through the room, his twisted grin never leaving his face. Maybe after half an hour, Jake finally reached the end of the game. "Damn it," he shouted. "I did it, Lisa. I beat the game." The clown stopped, and to our surprise, he spat out green slime onto the floor. And in his vomit, I could see a blue plastic key. "The key," I said, picking it up. "Finally!" I ran to the lock on the wall and turned the key. At first, nothing happened. But then a small white hatch in the wall we hadn't noticed before popped open, revealing a hole the size of a soccer ball. "What is that?" Jake asked. We approached the hole. All we could see was darkness. I grabbed a colorful plastic ball and threw it into the hole. We could hear it falling down a shaft, but we never heard it reach the bottom. The clown, who was now staring at us, sighed oddly disappointed. "What should we do?" I said. "There has to be something." The toy phone rang. A shiver ran down my spine, and I slowly approached it, picking up the receiver and holding it to my ear. At first, I only heard static, but then a voice began to whisper. "One of you must stick your head in to finally unlock the door and push it open. Who will it be? Who will take the risk and free you?" I froze, unsure of what to do. "It says one of us has to stick their head in the hole to unlock the door," I said. "What happens to the one who sticks their head in the hole?" he asked. "It doesn't say, but look at the text on the wall. According to it, one of us must make a sacrifice." "Right," Jake said. "We damn well aren't doing that." "Of course not," I said. "We'll find another way. We'll figure something out." We searched for hours, but to no avail. I could see the frustration and despair in Jake's eyes. He looked defeated, broken, and lost. We both sat on the cold floor, backs against the wall. I held him tightly. "This isn't fair," Jake whispered, his voice breaking. "We had so many plans. We were supposed to travel the world, get married, have kids. I always wanted to be a father, you know?" Tears streamed down his face, and I could feel his pain as if it were my own. We talked about our relationship, our hopes and dreams, our fears and regrets. It was an honest conversation, full of raw emotions and sincerity. "I love you," I said, wiping his tears away. "We'll get through this together." "I love you too," he replied, his voice barely more than a whisper. We stayed there for hours, holding each other, talking and crying, but eventually we had to face reality. We needed to make a decision that would determine our fate. I saw the fear in Jake's eyes, but I also saw determination. "I'll do it," he said, his voice trembling. "I'll stick my head in." "No, Jake," I protested. "We'll find another way. We'll figure something out." "There's no other way," he said, his voice now firm. "We can't stay here forever. We have to take a chance." I believe that's how the other two died. I knew he was right, but it didn't make it any easier. I held him tightly, kissed him gently on the lips, and then watched as he approached the hole. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and then stuck his head in. As soon as his head disappeared into the hole, he screamed continuously, hoarse with terror. His body convulsed violently, and I could see the muscles in his neck straining as he tried to pull his head back out, but it was too late. Something had grabbed him. I tried to pull him back, but it was as if he was glued to the hole. The clown danced behind us, singing "Happy Birthday" in a grotesque, demonic voice. And then, as Jake was still desperately screaming, the front door swung open and began to count down from 10. Fear overwhelmed me as I realized I had to leave before the clown reached 0. I tried one last time to pull Jake away, but his head was completely stuck, and I knew there was no hope left for him. I cried out in anguish as I ran out of the apartment, the door slamming shut behind me with a loud bang. I stumbled down the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest, and began banging on the neighbors' doors, desperately calling for help. But no matter how hard I tried, none of them opened their doors. Eventually, I made it home and called the police, telling them everything that had happened. They were skeptical, but I begged them to check it out. When we returned to the apartment building, it was as if it had never existed. The door was gone, and in its place, the wall was smooth, as if it had been there for years. The officers looked at me like I was crazy and refused to believe my story. They told me to stop wasting their time and left me standing there, stunned. I went back several times alone, trying to tear down the wall, but no matter how hard I struck it with a sledgehammer or how deep I drilled, I could never reach the door. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. I couldn't shake the feeling that Jake was still somewhere behind that wall, though it seemed impossible. Eventually, I tried to move on, but I couldn't. And then, a year later, on Jake's birthday, a video was sent to my phone. It was from an unknown number, and when I clicked play, my heart sank. It was a video of Jake, still trapped in the hole. He was naked, dirty, and exhausted. The clown stood behind him, tickling him and laughing hysterically.